Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Learnings. Delighted to be joined today by Mr. Michael Nettleton from Nock Deighton, as I can see in his sign behind. How much are you for sale for?
Well, subject to negotiation, price on application.
Cool. So I'm really grateful for your time. So thanks very much for joining today. How are things in Shropshire? First day of lockdown. Again, lockdown 2. So how's it been? How's it been? What's interesting? How's it been with your colleagues, and how are they feeling about it as well?
Yeah. The market has just been mental here, and I think that's something that's been shared and reflected across the whole country, really. So I don't think we're particularly special in that sense. As far as COVID itself is concerned, we're quite a rural county, so we haven't had the hotspots per se a lot of other areas have had. And from a staffing point of view, the staff have responded incredibly well to it, because it's been a huge challenge, because we're built as a business to do a certain amount, and at the minute we're doing double that. And I think it's extremely challenging for people to even take time off, because there's an element of guilt there that not only will the work be waiting for them when they get back, but actually their colleagues have to kind of pick up the slack during that period as well. So I'm quite bullish from a financial point of view as far as the next quarter or so is concerned. But from kind of hearts and minds and morale point of view, we're firing on all cylinders, and I don't think it's quite as healthy as we would like. But yeah, it's just finding the answer to that.
I was going to ask you what was the answer, because there's loads of people watching now that are waiting for the wisdom of Michael Nettleton, because I'm sure you're not the only one that's finding this is incredibly challenging. I think you and I spoke about this this morning, where we're on our 7 o'clock call, about people's well-being and how important it is. And before you answer the question, let's just say there's a few people that have joined, so you're obviously very popular, Mr. Nettleton. So hi Andrea, thanks very much for joining from Fife. Nice to see you. There's some fella called Tom Skelly. So Tom,
shout out to Tom. There you
go. Michael wants to know why you're not working and watching him. Samantha Jones, Miss Moneypenny herself, who's exceptional.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for joining us, and Moneypenny's great. So welcome, Sam. Thanks for joining us. So give Michael some love, share it, share his wisdom. Morning, Mr. Tyler from Billericay, or afternoon even. Thanks very much for joining. Appreciate it. So let's go back to the question. It is challenging. You're chairman of how many offices?
6. So,
and how many colleagues have you got?
Yeah, so we've got a team of about 50, 6 branches. And then quite a significant managed book of about 700 properties currently under management. So that's kind of the size and scope of the operation, and we cover quite a large geographical area with that. So a good hour and a half to get from top to bottom as far as our offices are concerned.
Yeah. So what are you doing, and what tips can you give to people out there that their team are really working, everybody working their socks off?
Yeah.
There will be times where people are tired. People need to refresh themselves. Hi Tom, thanks for joining.
I think the number one thing, and it's probably a bit in hindsight really, but I think you've got to surround yourself with exceptional people. So very fortunate in terms of the board, the branch principals, and everyone in our organisation. We've got a really, really high calibre of team. I think COVID's kind of really brought us together, and we've spent a small fortune in terms of kind of time, money, and effort getting our kind of brand and systems processes. So Tom's on this call, so take a hell of a lot of credit for that. Get it all kind of ship shape, and when COVID did hit, all of a sudden a lot of what we did suddenly made a lot of sense. But yeah, the challenge at the moment is just the unprecedented amount of volume, and I think the real challenge is, I suppose, to remember the basics, isn't it, really? Which as agents, where it's very easy and it's very seductive to go kind of chasing things, and customers always right, and all this kind of all this dogma in the nicest possible way. And I think you can get caught out doing that. So The challenge when it's as busy as this is kind of remember your training, do the basics well. And I think it's really, really key from, the leaders within, from within the business in terms of, the branch level, that the clients that they're taking on, are the right clients. So the agents, we're all guilty of, trying to chase kind of volume, aren't we? But I think when the volumes are as high as they are, you've got to be a little bit selective as to what you put into the sausage machine, because as far as volume is concerned, that's not a problem at the moment.
Okay, look, I've just been I'm in tears. That's lovely. So Tom Skelly worked alongside Mike for 13 years now. He's an incredible talent in the industry. Listen carefully, people, as the wisdom shared will be valuable. And then Tom McGee said, "Is your 1-to-1 due?" And he asked, "Does he want to play one?"
Can I thank Tom? Well, Tom obviously has lovely words. Can I thank Tom McGee for his book recommendation the other day? So yeah, Sam Zell read that one. Very good.
Okay, so what was the book recommendation then?
Am I Being Too Subtle by Sam Zell. So very good. So
okay. So let's come back. You talked about doing the basics well. You talk about taking on the right clients. What do you mean by taking on the right clients? More so in this market, being picky and choosy. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, I suppose that kind of fits in with the basics as well, really, in terms of kind of basic qualification. So, simple questions like how soon you're thinking of moving, and it's pattern recognition at the end of the day, isn't it? And I think that's why experience is so important, because 80% of the time when you're taking stuff on, whether it's right or not. And I think you've got to kind of, A, you've got to back your instincts, and B, you've got to have the kind of courage of your convictions and the skills to be able to do with that. And I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And it's probably the number one reason why a lot of people leave the industry, because there's a huge amount of fool's errands out there for you. And it's very seductive to get, caught chasing them. So having the discipline to focus on, that 5% of people who are actually going to spend money with you, that's what the top agents do. And and you can do it very politely, and you can do it, with no embarrassment to anybody. But it's having the skills and the ability and the nerve to be able to do that.
Okay, so what sort of things would you say to politely let people down? And again, there's a couple of things. Because if I'm new in the area, I want to get business, and I'm afraid of taking on a property that may be, X amount more than what it's worth. But it's a board, it's an instruction, it's something that will get my name out there. If I'm a newbie, I can understand. I mean, you've only been going since 1831, and you look incredibly well for it, Michael. But again, if I'm a newbie and I'm starting, obviously you're a professional. You were once a beginner. What would you do now? Because I know there's a few people that are setting up on their own today, which is an exciting and also nerve-wracking thing to be doing now. What advice would you give a newbies on the block?
I think it's very, you can be seduced by the here and now, can't you? So every instruction that you're on is the latest and the greatest, but I think you've got to have the courage of your convictions to be able to kind of sit back for a moment and go, look, on average, if I'm winning, say, 40% of the business, brackets, that means 60% I'm not, I'm probably doing a good job. So there's different metrics, from brand to brand in terms of where they would put the peg in terms of what their conversion rate could, would, and should be. But I think the one thing we can all agree on is if you're batting at 100%, you're probably doing something very wrong. So yeah, I think it's having the ability to look at things from the macro point of view, and on average, this is what we're doing, and following those systems and following those processes. And if you are starting out, that's doubly more important to be following those systems and processes and getting them embedded, straight out the gate, because before you know it, you'll be up and running. You'll be 2 or 3 years into it, and you've got a ruck of bad habits, and you've got the wrong culture in your business. So so I think really doubling down on those systems and processes is absolutely key. Which bit of a Tom loving, but having someone like Tom in your business makes life a hell of a lot easier.
Okay, lovely. There you go. Hacks in Sheffield says thanks for the question. So Hack's relatively new. in the industry. Hack, does that answer your question, or would you like Michael to expand on it a little bit more with his pearls of wisdom? Let's just talk about your culture then, whilst Hack's coming back to us. So loyalty, integrity, accountability, and service are your 4 core values.
Correct. Yeah.
Where did they come from, and why is it important for agents and also businesses to have those core values, and what do they mean for you?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, well, we've always had 2 of them, which is the integrity and the service side of things. So that was always in our strapline. So our strapline used to be integrity and service since 1831. But a lot of people criticise those 2 words because it's not exactly clear what it is that they mean. And I kind of agree with them in some respects, but we've gone to the effort of actually explaining what that means, and I'm satisfied with them. And we've also added, the 2 more, which was accountability and loyalty, as we say. So as far as integrity is concerned, for me, I think you can define that as what you do when no one's watching. And from an agent's point of view, I think that's really, really important, because I think we get very unfairly kind of maligned. But it is very, we are a commercial, entity at the end of the day. And I think it's very easy to be making kind of short-term decisions. So, one of our guiding principles as a business is whenever we do have, a situation where things need kind of discussing and we are at a crossroads, the answer to, what's in the best interest of the customer will invariably get you the right answer. So if you're looking at playing a long game, if you can answer the question, what's in the best interest of the customer, you will get things right 99.999% of the time. And as soon as you start chasing short-term things, it's going to bite you.
Brilliant. That's great. Okay. Accountability.
Yeah, I can't just do what you say what you do. Which it's easier said than done. But that literally is it. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you haven't done it because you're incredibly busy, stick your hand up and say, look, it's my fault, I'm sorry, but we're going to get it sorted. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect. It doesn't exist. But I think how you react to when things go wrong is really, really important. And, some people react better than others. And again, if you react the wrong way, it can really catch you out. But you'll find if you can be, open and honest and transparent with people when things do go wrong, enough people out of 10 will forgive you for it. In fact, they'll probably respect you more for it. They certainly won't respect you if you're trying to bull them.
So how did you get that culture and get all these values into the business? Has it been something that they've been there? I know you mentioned you had 2 of those already on your board and you brought the other 2 in. You talked about you got 50 members, 50 colleagues there that you work with. How have you got them all to have the same understanding about the core values and built the culture into your business?
They always were, ultimately. So it's nothing new. We haven't had a big turnaround. My father was very instrumental in all of that, because all of these teachings and learnings, he probably hadn't read the books per se, but he naturally got it in him, and that was what he was all about. And he was all about surrounding himself with top people and talent and empowering them. So we've always had strong leadership and direction within the business, and the latest generation. Tom, Ross, Dawn and Jane on the board. We've just given it a little bit more clarity and a bit more focus, the old corporate with a small c. So, we were always very much along the lines of, doing our best and all these, slightly intangible, shall we say. And we've just put a little streak of steel into it in terms of saying, well, that's great, but, at the end of the month, this is what it needs to look like as well. And it's and treading that fine line and that balance. That's where we perceive the success to be.
Okay, so you made an interesting point there, and I have a pleasure of meeting your father, and what a lovely man he was. And we can understand where you get your pearls of wisdom from, because when it came to our mastermind day, the respect that everybody showed to him was which was amazing, and we all learned an awful lot. So surround yourself with top people. So again, that is a great learning. Again, for people watching, what do you mean by that, and what do you do to surround yourself with top people?
From my point of view, I suppose I'm quite clear what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And you know, if you're hanging around me, there's always going to be a role for people to do all the things that I'm no good at. So yeah, and I think from an ego point of view, I don't think I can do everything. And actually, it gives me a great pleasure when people kind of take on roles and, you know, whisper it quietly. They do it a damn sight better than I ever could anyway. And I don't mind that. I think that's great. And that was Dad's always kind of superpower. So he was never intimidated by people being better than him, because he was like, well, you know, I don't really see that as being a problem. As long as they're on my team, you know, fantastic. So I think that's the key, really. It's empowering people, because, you know, if you're getting round pegs in round holes, they'll surprise you, and they'll do a fantastic job for you. And by for you, I mean for themselves and for everyone else whilst they're at it.
So how do you get, so one of the things that I see from going round is that some business owners find their team fail to take responsibility. Now, how can you get people to be responsible for their actions?
I think, and this is something that we've learned a hell of a lot in the last, you know, few years, really. I think you just got to have absolute clarity. I think you've got to be clear about what you expect from them, and up to a point, they've got to be clear in terms of what they expect from you. And I think as long as everybody understands what good looks like and where we're going and where we're heading, it's reasonably straightforward to manage. As soon as you start getting seduced by, but that's John, that is, and John's different, so we have to make exceptions, and which is incredibly easy to do, and it's very seductive to do, and you think you're doing the right thing and you think you're being nice, and then 6-12 months down the line, you realize that you've got, you know, 50 exceptions and no clarity, and, you know, it doesn't reflect well on you as a leader ultimately, because that's what people want and need and crave.
Okay, so maybe this will answer your question, because you asked for a little bit more, please. So we'll try and answer it. So again, going back to a new starter or a new business, and taking your words there, what does good look like?
What does good look like? So in what context? So
well, you were talking about, you know, taking responsibility and people, you know, so I suppose from your point of view in your business, you know, I mean, I think you're better than good. I think you're world class. So let's go away from the good. You know, what does a world class agency look like in Michael Nettleton's world?
Well, like I said, I think the 4 key drivers are what we discussed in terms of our values, really. And I think if you can adhere to those, that's where you need to be. In terms of kind of answering Hack's question, we've broken it down. So in terms of we've broken the business down effectively into one person, if that makes sense. So for every one extra person that joins the team, there's an expectation that, you know, 75 grand's worth of revenue is going to be coming with it. So we break that down really simply in terms of, right, well, in order to earn that 7, because basically how we decided it was, so right, if someone was going to be self-employed working from their back bedroom, they need to be earning X, okay? And because they can get a job for that, so why would they be self-employed if they weren't? So right, so they need to be earning X. Then you've got to pay for your right move, you've got to pay for your on the market, you've got to pay for your CRM, you've got to pay for all your business infrastructure, this, that, and the other. Realistically, if you're not earning something like 75 grand, it's not really worth it. So that's from like the self-employed point of view, or from someone starting out. So we built that into our business and then kind of scaled it, saying, right, well, actually, if you had 2 people, then maybe that team should be doing 150 grand, 3 people, 4 people. So office of 4, the target's 300 grand. And I think that's perfectly doable personally. And then we break it down. So for each, from a targeted point of view, per person, well, what you need to do this month is you need to do 6 valuations. If you're doing 6 valuations and converting half of them, that's 3 instructions. You need to be getting your mortgages and your conveyancing converted, because in the nicest possible way, A, that's free money, and B, more importantly, funnily enough, is the fact that in order to get the mortgage and the conveyancing leads, you've got to have qualified the people properly. So in order to get there, it's my old brown M&M's analogy, which happy to talk about. That's a really good clue that you've asked all the right questions. You've got the rapport. You understand what they need. And actually, yes, I do need a mortgage. Can you put me in touch with your advisor, please? So from my point of view as a business leader, it's really clear to me from a distance as to who's doing the job really well and who is just kind of, servicing leads and kind of getting by. So mortgages and conveyancing, and then ultimately what you bill. So which is 75 divided by 12, which is £6,000 and a bit, isn't it?
Okay, lovely. Sorry, I'm taking notes. Okay.
So we scaled that down, and indeed scaled it. So we broke it down to its single element, and then multiplied it by 50, and then populated the spreadsheet and said, right, that's what you got to do. So
okay.
Easy.
Sounds very simple when you put it like that.
Yeah, and then COVID happens, and plan B. But to be fair, we're very pleased with how it's going.
Good. So Tom McGee, I would like to ask Mike about the challenges he found working in a multi-generational family business, specifically when the younger next generation wants to modernise or change approach.
From a family point of view, no problem at all, because my dad was far more controversial than I'll ever be as far as the future is concerned. Yeah, he was right out there. He couldn't send an email, but he knew about the cloud 10 years ago and saying we got to go into it. So that was never the challenge really. So the challenges I found was being, quite literally, people within the organisation had changed my nappy, and I think I've said that before. And the joke then was not recently, but so it was more the transition of growing into the business, where I've gone from being the tea boy to then all of a sudden being the manager, the director, the chairman, and and transitioning those relationships. It's a lot easier when you're an incumbent and they don't know you as anything else. So for the people who are joining the business, they only know me as the chairman, and that's really straightforward. But I think it's tougher for people when you're kind of rising through the ranks and they were like, well, I taught you how to do this job and now you're telling me how to do it. But from a family point of view, Dad was just fantastic. So there was no challenge there, far from it.
So how do you deal with that from somebody changing your nappy? My aunt always reminds me. She said, "I used to change your nappy so many years ago." So that you must have found that hard.
No, not really. It never fazed me really. I didn't know any different, so I didn't particularly remember it. So I had no reason to be embarrassed by it. So
I thought lunchtime learnings would descend to talking about nappies. So hi Ian, thanks very much for joining us, and hi Anthony, thanks very much for joining us at a very opportune moment, wondering what they're all talking about. So coming back to Tom's question and everything you shared, so is everyone in your company a complete agent listing and selling?
No. So we've got the whole spectrum really. So we've got branch principals who head up the offices. We've got property consultants who go out and pitch, win the business, lettings and sales. We've got negotiators, got admin, property managers. So it's a conventional, traditional office setup really. So we're not doing anything too kind of modern in that sense. All we've done, like I say, is we've put the small c of corporate into it, where we have said, look, in the nicest possible way, you expect a very, very specific figure at the end of each month as far as your pay packet is concerned, and we have no problem with that, and we actually encourage you to want more, but in return, X, Y, and Z needs to happen. So we're not complete bastards about it when things fall short, but we're not a pushover about it either. So, but like I say, the key is to be completely transparent. Everyone knows where they are. We have something called the decathlon, where we've got kind of 10 metrics in terms of phone calls, inbound, outbound, viewings, valuations, offers taken, etc. So everybody gets a point tally at the end of the month in terms of what they've done. So which is quite revealing, and people are comparing themselves against their peers rather than comparing themselves against my opinion or anyone else as far as the line manager is concerned.
Okay. Would you go into a little bit more detail about the decathlon? Sorry, somebody's at the door and the dogs are welcoming them. I think they're giving you a round of applause.
There you
Or
go.
maybe because Dawn's come on and they know how much Dawn likes dogs, so they're saying hello to Dawn.
So yeah,
Ignore them. One of the kids will come and shut them up in a minute, hopefully. Or Mrs. Brown. Keep going. Don't worry about it. This is a professional show.
But yeah, the decathlon as we have it, like I say, it's 10 metrics, all pretty standard stuff in terms of what any frontline kind of sales lettings team should be doing. You get a point for an inbound phone call, 2 points for an outbound phone call, 3 points for reviewing booked. The list goes on. Price reduction gets like 8 points, 9 points for an instruction, and 10 points for a sale agreed, something along those lines. So I've not got it in front of me, but I could soon get it out. So tally it all up at the end of the month, and everybody can see where they're at. And there's some phenomenal performances by individuals. And obviously we as a leadership team have our opinions about those people, but now we have the facts to back them up. So we've got quite a clear and ambitious plan as far as what we're looking to be doing over the next 5 years. We have a responsibility to be opening the pathways for that talent, because historically it was always a little bit dead man's shoes, in as much as, well, that there's a bright career here for you, but you might have to wait for the person ahead of you to leave before that's available. Whereas, we are in the process of scoping out some quite, some exciting opportunities, I think it's fair to say, and it's all geared towards, developing and growing the talent that we've got. And that's, we've got plenty of talent in the boardroom, but we've got plenty of talent outside of it as well. And we have a responsibility to make sure that they come through.
Brilliant. Can I touch on something there? And Dawn, yeah, it's all your fault. Who let the dogs off? Who let the dogs out? No, they're fine. They're calm now. So the next person rings on the bell. Planning. So you talked about having a 5-year plan. Good friend of the show, Assad. We heard about his 5-year plan, and he got there in 4 years to become the #1 agent in the UK. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so important to plan ahead?
I think because life gets in the way, and I don't know if you've not got a clear plan in terms of what you want to be doing. 5 years it's just going to pass you by. So I just think it's really, really important that you've got pen to paper and got something resembling clarity in terms of what your objectives are, which will be very different for very different people. So there's no right or wrong. But if you haven't written it down, I would say the odds of it happening are pretty slim.
Where'd you start? Where would you start with this thing? Again, whether it's Hack or somebody else who's just starting and thinking 5 years, God, if I get through 1 year, I'm doing well with everything that's going on at the moment. I can't see look ahead to 5 years, but I agree it's really important. But where would you start?
I think the complexity is keeping it simple. And it's what we touched on in terms of just those monthly targets. So, talking to Hack, have you done 6 valuations this month? Because if you have, you're on the way. And if it was 5, no problem. But, you need to get 7 next month, because you need to average 6. So just keeping it really, 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 really simple, which is not easy. And then you can start to scale it. And then when it's like Lego, isn't it? At the end of the day, you got this little Lego block. You start with one of those, and then you imagine what you perhaps could build with it, and then you start working backwards from there, I suppose. But what that basic DNA, what that Lego block is, and I think that's really we a board meeting earlier on today, but by having that kind of foundation, it's quite easy for us to plug a lot of clarity in.
Okay, brilliant. Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm fine. Michael's fine. He's got a big smile on his face, because the next thing we're going to talk about is something that came out of lockdown. What was that?
Was this our foray into prop tech?
It could be. So yes,
on LinkedIn, you might have heard about. Yeah. So where do you want to start with that? So happy to answer the questions.
So what I suppose you're on the front line. You're getting loads of emails coming in on lettings. You've got a very, I suppose, tired workforce that are dealing with inquiry after inquiry, and some of them, you know, most probably aren't relevant at all. But you saw, or actually a bit like a doctor, aren't you? You know, you saw that there was a problem and you've come up with a solution. And obviously, working on the front line, you can see it a lot more. So that's just, I suppose, a little summary. So what, you know, what actually happened?
Well, basically, we have an all hands meeting every night at 5:15. Quick meeting's a good meeting. Whole company on Zoom. Everybody comes in, sings out what they've done today. Just, you know, very, you know, not name and shame. It's quite positive. It's quite a nice end to the, you know, as soon as the meeting's finished, you know, day's finished, you know, off we go. But, you know, in the middle of lockdown, you know, I was expecting people to be singing out all these fantastic jobs that they've been doing, because, you know, we've never had 6 weeks off before, so we can be doing, because we didn't furlough everybody. You know, we kept our top people on in terms of, you know, frontline sales, which, you know, we didn't have to do. We could have sent them home and have the government pay for it. But, you know, we found ourselves in a position where instead of being able to do those kind of high value tasks like prospecting, looking after the pipeline, et cetera, what they were ultimately doing was just fielding lettings leads. And, you know, the dogma in the industry is perhaps, you know, every lead needs to be answered. And I don't disagree with that per se. But the reality is that the variance of quality is massive. So we jump on that all hands meeting every night. And instead of all this kind of positivity as to what we've done today, everyone was just ashen because they were just burnt out, just dealing with to be blunt, dealing with dross. So very simply, there was a form knocking around the various Facebook pages that was, look, you know, what you need to do is email the applicants this form. Those that fill it in, great, rent the houses to those. Those that don't fill it in, that's fine, ball's in their court. They'll get back to you when they're ready. But there's not much more you can do with them. And we're probably finding, you know, kind of an 80-20 split. So most people didn't respond, but those that did, that's fine. So we were doing that, but we were doing it manually. And I thought, in this world of tech, that was ridiculous. So I had a word with iSev, who are our web design firm, who are fantastic. And I said, look, you know, is there any way we can build this form into like an HTML and send it out as an autoresponder? And, you know, do this whole job automatically. So the only leads that come through now are qualified leads, rather than a name and an address and the onus on you to pick up the phone and ring them back.
And what difference has that made to your colleagues?
Everything. Well, the first thing, and then the next thing we did the same thing with the phone. That's made a massive difference. So that's the real secret sauce when I got excited by it. But the reality is the difference is made is that the first office we did it to had 200 email inquiries for 7 properties to let, and 1 member of staff on that Monday morning. So, and you know, and they got sales to deal with as well, by the way, plus everything else that was coming in that day. So this is in the middle of lockdown, of course. So the difference was, you know, if you were one of those 200 people who emailed us, I can't guarantee we'll get back to you today. You know what I mean? So what we've found is, from a customer experience point of view, those people who fill the form out have a far better customer experience, because we've actually got the ability to call them back, because we know who the serious people are. From a staff point of view, it's 1,000 times better, because from a staff point of view, you're not just chasing, you know, a needle in a haystack of just rubbish leads. You're just dealing with qualified leads. And if you're dealing with frontline lettings, all you want to do is rent houses to people, not leave messages and chase things up and have people not turn up. And then from a higher level point of view, obviously, you know, a huge amount of shoe leather's been saved. So just everybody. So
it's a win-win-win. So what's it called?
Agent response.
And how do people get in touch with you to find out a little bit more if they're interested?
LinkedIn, Facebook, through Nock Deighton's website if you need to, so you can get my contact details on there. But yeah, no, happy to demo it to anybody. So all I know is it's really simple and it works. And our staff, and when I put it in, I thought our staff would kick against it, because I was a bit worried that they were like, oh, you know, we've had a few complaints and, you know, people can't be bothered to fill the form out. But no, everyone was like, yeah, we really like it. It works. So yeah, really pleased.
So Dawn, when you're getting 100+ email inquiries via portals per day, but 80 of them don't answer the callback, something has to be done. So just it'd be interesting, comment, put in the comments, do you feel exactly the same? Is that what's happening in your agency? Because, obviously Michael's come up with a solution that is going to solve the challenges that you have at the moment. And it's
our lettings team help sales.
Sorry?
Our lettings team are helping out with the sales at the moment.
Yeah.
Because they're able to do their workload.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I know, let's carry on with talk about tech, because I know you like your tech. So what do you use? What works well in your business and has made a difference? And more importantly, because I know it's important to you, you're getting a return on your investment.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff out there, isn't there, at the moment? I suppose the big thing for me from a marketing point of view, I think you've got to set a benchmark of being able to get a 10x return on anything that is lead generation and is marketing. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is we have 10% of our budget is towards marketing. And if we spent 20 or 30% of our budget on marketing, well, that's our profit gone, to be fair. So we've got to be, so 10% is the number. So you've got to work back from there. So you've got to say, right, okay, well, what's our average fee? Okay, our average fee, in our instance, it is around about, $3,000. Then you've got to say, right, okay, so bearing in mind your conversion rate, let's say we convert, say, 30% of jobs. So let's say it's worth $1,000 to be out on evaluation. Okay. So if it's worth $1,000 to be on evaluation, I've got 10% of my budget. I'll pay £100 for every converted kind of PSV or PRV in terms of getting in someone's front room. So there's a lot of tech out there that's quite a lot of money per month, and if it can't demonstrate that it's getting you X amount of leads and a 10x return on the basis of what it's costing you, I don't know how good a job I'm doing of explaining this, but then you've got to kind of question it. So, if something's costing you £1,000 a month and you're only getting 3 or 4 leads from it, it ain't working. So not unless, a lead's worth 200, 300, 400 quid in terms of your budget to you. And it probably isn't. So yeah, you've got to be quite disciplined from that point of view. But there's some great tools out there, but it's what you do with them. So, but, Valpal for me, I think is a really, really good one. And Create's a right move, to be fair. Very controversial. They deserve a lot of the criticism that they're getting, but as a tool, it does work.
Okay, brilliant. And what things have you implemented or put in your business that works? I know you're a big fan of, was it Evernote?
Yeah, oh no, it's got nothing to do with Nock Deighton. That's purely personal.
Really
I'm a massive evangelist of it, and I bore everyone to tears.
Go on, share it.
Well,
this is all about helping people.
Yeah, Evernote is my outsourced brain, so I just dump everything into that, and I've now got an encyclopedic memory that's about 5 years old, where anything of any remote value that I've gleaned, I save it into there, stick a tag on it, and off we go. So I can remember stuff. I come across as quite efficient and organised when I'm using it, but it's just not the truth. But it's a fantastic tool. Costs about £3 or £4 a month, and it's ace. So, and that's nothing to do with the estate agency, just organising your life. It's fantastic.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Great advice. So I know you also are a massive reader.
Yes.
And listen to more podcasts than I do. So again, what are the best ones you watch, listen to that you recommend?
Number one, Seth Godin. So because it only takes so I'm a bit of a podcast bore. So I've got to be careful about kind of evangelizing about stuff. But Seth Godin, it's half an hour a week, and it's fantastic. And I don't know what he charged Property Academy to be available last week, but it was multiples of tens of thousands of pounds. Subscribe to his podcast. It's free, and you get half an hour a week from him. It's brilliant. So yeah, Seth Godin. I really like James Altucher. So I think he's brilliant. $1 Million Agent, Estate Agents podcast, obviously.
Obviously, without saying.
Yeah, but to be fair, there's loads of really good well, when I say there's loads, there's only 3 or 4 actually, so it's not a very crowded space. But in the podcast space in UK estate agency, there's really good stuff in there. And Stephen, the credit to you. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. You've had.
Wow.
I know. Well, it was rude to interrupt. You sent me on another path at the beginning. Watch it again. I didn't get the opportunity. But first of all, thanks very much for having me on. But second of all, you have had some ridiculously good guests on here. Like, and it's free. Like, they'll charge you. I've no idea what some of those guests would charge you to do a public speaking event. So to get them on here and get them in the UK estate agency space, and actually, just spend half an hour, 45 minutes learning from them, it's priceless. So yeah, incredible. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. And here's the thing: it's about asking. Okay, if you don't ask, you don't get. And and I've been rejected many a time by asking people, but I keep on persevering. Jeb Blunt was a massive example of that. In fact, I remember you asking me the question, how the hell did you manage to get him onto your podcast?
Yeah, you had no right, but you did it.
But if you ask, you get. And there's, that's a simple lesson there. And, had 2 fantastic guests on Tuesday, Nigel Risner and Neil Martin. And Nigel recommended the Aladdin Factor by Jack Canfield. And I cannot remember the other guy's name. Sorry. His first name's Mark. Okay, so Jack and Mark, let's be fair, exceptional book, just about asking. And what I loved about Tuesday, Neil sent me a message the next day. He's already bought the book. He's got it. It's there. It's in front of him. He took a picture. So, and these are people that are award-winning speakers, and they want to learn. We're now joined by Gareth Southgate as well. So it's an honour. Thank you, Gareth, for joining us. Very exciting today. I don't know when you announce your squad, but please don't pick Harry Kane, whatever you do. Okay, keep him out, Gareth. Thank you. There you go. And Luke's on here as well, calling you Mr. Smooth, and Richard Taylor, Smoother Silk. There you go. Thank you, Gareth. Very kind of you. Okay, so a couple of final questions, because I'm really grateful for your time. So, does Michael Nettleton have non-negotiables? And if they are, what are they, business-wise?
I suppose it all comes back to those 4 key values, really. And I think as long as it all fits in with that, then no problem. And then when it comes outside that, then it gets my heckles up quite quick.
Okay, thank you. And your next question is, if you were starting today as a new business, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
So, did you get that, Stephen? So
no, I didn't. I just thought you were just very quiet.
No. So from a personal journey, I probably wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Point of view.
Yeah.
So I would say that, but I think it's interesting actually, because I think if we were starting out again from scratch, I think one thing that I've really thought about is what we do as an established business is very, very different to what you do as someone starting out. So I don't envisage us, to be blunt, ever kind of door knocking or anything like that. But if I was starting out, that would be the first thing I'd do, because there's a fantastic clue of a sale sign sat outside someone's front door that is very clearly demonstrating that A, they're in the market for selling, and B, they haven't sold. So I think that the behaviours of someone just starting out are very, very different to something that's established. And I suppose it's always I don't know if a concern's the right word, but it's always a challenge of ours as an established business to kind of maintain that bit of hunger that you need, because the last thing we want to do is be complacent.
Yeah, I suppose at the start you're a chase agent, and then you become an attraction agent. People are attracted to you, they're attracted to your brand. You know, you've given exceptional customer service. To start off with, you've got to get your name out there. You know, and in 1831, I'm sure it's very different to it is in 2020. And I think the advantages in 2020 today is the use of video and Facebook, and, you know, the reach that it can get you so quickly. So, you know, if you are starting today, there's going to be a lot of agents out there that are very smug, comfortable in their surroundings. And I think for newbies, that's such a great way of getting your face out there, getting your name out there, getting your brand out there very, very quickly. And, you know, we had Oliver on here and his M44 Facebook group. They've got over 3,000 people. You know I've been doing some work with an agency, and their reach last month on Facebook was over 18,000. You know, so it's great. You know, you're getting reach very, very quickly. So if you're new, that's what I will be doing. And if you can overcome your fear as well and get comfortable being uncomfortable as quickly as you possibly can, it's going to make a massive, massive difference.
But it wouldn't work in Shropshire, so don't do it here. but you're right, that it's free, and you will get market. Like, yeah, what Oliver James has done, yeah, is Oliver Press, so it is incredible, and that is the blueprint. And I think anybody who can do half of what he's done half as well is just going to do really well, because that is the future, no doubt.
100%. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a great guest. Thank you all for watching, whether you're watching now or whether you're watching on replay, or actually whether you're listening to it now as a podcast, which it is. So if you go to iTunes, Lunchtime Learning, Stephen Brown, you can listen to this now on your way to work, whilst you're walking, whilst you're running, as Mike does. Obviously, you've got the Estate Agent podcast as well. Don't make faces. On Tuesday, I've got Asad Riaz from Location, and Charlie Perdius talking about collaboration. So they have both come together to collaborate on landing new homes. So I'm looking forward to that. And on Thursday, I've got a gentleman called Mike Coulter, who one of my favorites books of the year is Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. Mike is one of BJ Fogg's disciples. So we're going to be talking about tiny habits, productivity, and how that can help. And that's made a massive difference to me this year. If you've got any guests that you would like me to try and ask, I am happily do that. So please let me know. If you are listening or on audio podcast, please like it, review it. Mike's promised me he's going to do it faithfully as soon as he ends this. But I'm really grateful for you listening, for you watching. So thanks very much. Lisa, thank you for your kind words. Amazing session. Thanks both. Paul, Rolf, thanks for joining us. I plan to be here on the start. We'll catch up later. It's now a podcast. I didn't know that. But now you do. So no excuses, Mr. Rolf. So thank you, everybody. Have a really great afternoon. Great weekend. Stay safe, and thank you very much. Have a good one.
Cheers, Stephen. Thank you.